Today, Steve Carr, good friend of mine from way back in the day. I did a Masters while he was doing a PhD at UWA, and Steve's focus on this was acidic soil, and he's got some really good insights. It's a complicated subject, so if you don't really like soil science, this might not be for you. But I really enjoyed my chat in depth with Steve on all issues, acidic soil, lime, the importance of it for West Australian sustainable agriculture into the future. So enjoy the words of wisdom here by my good friend Dr. Steve Carr. Good morning, Steve.
G'day, Bill. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, going well, thanks.
Bit chilly. We've got our coats on.
Yes, yep.
It's been a cold week, actually, hasn't it?
It has been very cold.
Yeah. But now I met you probably back in the 90s, early 90s.
Yeah, would be. Yeah. Maybe even late 80s, I imagine.
Yeah, and you were doing a PhD, and I was trying to do a PhD, but didn't quite get there. Yep. You did. Well done.
Oh, well, probably luck and management.
Well, you came through a harder route. I did an ag science degree at UWA. You did something else before you went to UWA?
Yeah, I did a general science degree. Yep.
At Curtin?
Curtin, yep.
Yeah, and then you were a technician out at Merredin?
That's right, yep.
And how long were you out there for?
I spent about 6 years out in Merredin, yep.
Yeah, and that was probably good for you to get a real, get your hands dirty, I guess.
Yeah, it was. It was working on soils, and yeah, it was an interesting start.
Yeah. What was the project on? What were you working on?
I was specifically working on soil acidity and focused in the Eastern Wheatbelt, where the most severely acid soils existed.
Yeah, and they still do.
And they still do, yeah.
And it's tricky because they're a long way from the coast where the lime is.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is there any other form of lime out there, dolomites?
There are local deposits, but the quality's probably not justified to make them go too far. Some people use them quite locally on their farms, and it's quite successful, but limited use really.
Yeah. All right. So can you just tell the audience why do we have to lime? What's the importance of that?
Well, everything you do in agriculture basically exports what's known as alkalinity. So plants, animals, whatever you grow and take it away, you're leaving what's called an acid debt behind. It's all to do with the ratio of cations and anions in anything we produce. So if we remove hay, if we remove grain, if we remove wheat or wool or meat, all of that's having a slightly acidifying effect. So it needs to be replaced, and lime's the cheapest and most logical way to do that.
Right. And so for those that might not understand, we've got hydroxide and hydrogen. Put the two together, you got water.
Yep.
You split them apart. The negative one, OH, is alkaline, and the positive one, H, is acidic. And from our school days, we remember that 7 is neutral, 1 is highly acidic, and 14 is super alkaline.
Yep.
And crops don't like 1. Nothing could grow in 1, could it?
No, nothing.
What's the most acidic thing that people would know in their common household?
Oh, probably just things like vinegar in your kitchen.
That'd be 3?
2.5, 3, yep.
Yep. Okay, so crops don't like it below about 4.5.
Yeah, well, I think the optimal to access the nutrients they need is probably about 5.5 to 6.
Yeah. So and so what does this acidity do to the roots to reduce production?
Well, there's a number of complicated processes go on, but I guess one of the simplest things is it stops the roots penetrating through soil. So it slows the rate that roots grow. If it's severe enough, it'll stop them growing altogether. So if you have a limited root system, you don't access water and nutrients that you need to grow.
And what specifically does it do to the roots?
Well, it stops the cells dividing, so it will actually stop root growth entirely if it's acidic enough. And that's usually derived from aluminium toxicity.
And so aluminium levels increase?
When pH drops, aluminium becomes more soluble. So when you've got pHs in the right range for plants to grow, 5.5 to 6, Aluminium's in a form that doesn't impact on the roots, but if it drops below that, it slowly becomes more soluble, and it's not a linear change, it's a logarithmic change. So a small change in pH can give you a very big change in aluminium that becomes soluble. Once it's in solution, it has all those negative impacts on the plant roots.
And I've seen photos of stunted roots from aluminium toxicity or low pH, and they look like the roots have been burnt, really.
Well, they do. They just effectively stop growing. I mean, a nice root growing in a good soil should be white and it'll grow rapidly. Lots of fine hairs branching all the time, whereas if the aluminium's in solution, the roots become all stubby and short and brown and don't access any of the things that they need.
And, obviously people listening to this podcast will have a reasonable, they'll, if they're interested in this subject, I think they'll like us to go a little bit deeper because they'll be into agriculture a bit, I'd suspect. And you're certainly capable of doing that with us, so I'd like to do that a little bit. So there's a number of aluminium parts per million in the solution that's a problem. What's that number? And different plants too, isn't it?
Look, it's different. There's probably no one single number. The soils are very diverse, and the forms of aluminium that actually can do damage to plants are diverse. So I don't think you really can pinpoint down a number outside. Some specific soil types you can do that.
Yep.
As a general statement, I guess we start to get pretty concerned once pH below 4.8 appears, because that's when that solubility starts to change, and different soils will have different levels that will impact different plants that we grow. So wheat is perhaps more tolerant than things like barley and canola, and triticale and rye are more tolerant than wheat. But it's too complicated to say there's a single number. That's why we simplify it down and use pH.
Yeah, well, simple numbers I had was 2 and then 4 and then 10's a real out of the world problem. But there are other things as well, as you're saying.
There are, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's complicated because you measure those low levels on some soils and they're soluble and cause damage, and on other soils it might not be the case.
Yeah, you're a good scientist, Steve.
Maybe once, not anymore.
But that's the thing, isn't it? There are lots of little nooks and crannies you can go down in this issue. But it's why is Western Australia, and West Australia is a real acidity problem, generally speaking. Why do you think it is more so? South Australia's not. Victoria's got heavy volcanic soil more, but we really have a problem, don't we?
Well, it's due to the age of most of the soils in our agricultural area. Some of them are 2.5 to 3.5 billion years old. So
that's changed now with the Hubble, the new James Webb. It's 27 billion years now.
Oh, okay.
The goalposts have shifted.
Fair enough. But yeah, Time will cause soils to acidify even if they're not used for agriculture. Agriculture just accelerates the process.
Mm. And our soils are very sandy, so they don't have a lot of glue in them, do they?
They don't. And, the other thing that a sandy soil that sort of doesn't have a lot of clay or other things to, what we say, buffer against the pH change, that makes them difficult. So our soils acidify quickly, but when we put lime on them, the good thing is that they respond relatively quickly as well.
Yeah, and lime doesn't move much either, but once you get the pH above a certain level, you can get a bit of movement.
You can. Soils are made up of lots of different components, whether it's sandy particles, which are bigger, or silt is smaller, and then clay is smaller again. We really need to get movement of lime, you need to get above a pH of 5.8 to facilitate that movement down.
Mm. And I farmed, as you know, for 13 years up at Morrow, and I had some wodgel soils there on about 3 different spots on my farm. Wodgel, for those that don't know, is a type of vegetation that parallels very acidic natural soils down around the 4 plus.
Yep.
Yeah. and to depth, but it's actually a good loamy soil, isn't it?
It's a beautiful structured soil. It's just that it's a very ancient soil, and so it has acidified. And one of the problems farming those soils is that the acidity problem is deeper down, which is harder to repair.
Yeah, so it's like 1.5 meters typically.
They probably range up to about that depth, sometimes a little bit deeper.
So do you think that was caused by natural legumes, that nitrogen fixing that acidifies the soil through time?
I think it would have been a contribution, but it's probably just the age would be the most dominant thing.
Okay. And, of course, to lift the pH on something that's got a bit of glue in it and it's already really badly acidic, that takes a fair bit of lime, doesn't it?
It does, and that was one of the very big difficulties in the early days of liming research in WA. Bill Porter in Merredin was working on those soils and put lime on them, and you could change the surface pH very quickly, but you didn't change yield, and that was because the yield limitation was deeper down. And so it wasn't until we changed the whole profile depth, or down to 30, 40 and even deeper centimetres, that you got these big yield responses.
Yeah, I was talking to a farmer only recently, actually, out in the Eastern Wheatbelt south of Merredin, and he said, that bloke Steve Carr, he came out here and he told me he put lime on and he, could solve the problem, and of course it didn't happen, and I'd asked him to come back, and he you probably went off to do your PhD then, I don't know. But I know what he's saying, and I know what you're saying. When you dump a whole heap of superphosphate on the ground in the old days, you notice around the edge the clover and everything grows really, really well. You don't see that with the lime pit, do you?
No, you don't. No.
Because?
Well, it's a slow, subtle change. You just don't see that. You don't impact on the soil that's limiting your root growth.
Yeah, and also it doesn't. Phosphorus can move a little bit, or it can find a level of non-toxicity, and the plants can really grow, because you can have too much phosphate, can't you?
You can.
But with lime, actually South Australia in the Eyre Peninsula, they farm lime. Actually, where my father's mother's father's father farmed 86,000 acres at Streaky Bay in 1850, way back to 1814, I think. He was one of the first to get off the boat there. He went out there and farmed there. That's just all limestone rubble, or so it was. I don't know how it's going now, but they are farming that area, because you can farm really alkaline soil, but you can't farm really acidic soil very well, can you?
No, that's right. I mean, most agricultural soils are derived from rock material like limestones that are alkaline, but we're quite different in Western Australia.
Yeah. And so that story about dumping a whole heap of lime and not seeing better growth around it, I think you explained to me probably 20 years ago that you can't, once the soil gets to pH 7, you can't dissolve any more lime anyway. So it's not going to not do much value to you. You've got to shift that lime to another place to then get it to dissolve into acid soil. Yes.
Yep. Well, one of the things that how lime works in soils, it's a pH dependent reaction. Most people probably know that the pH scale is logarithmic, which means there's 10 times as much acid at pH 4 as there is at pH 5. But the rate that lime dissolves doesn't change tenfold for a unit, it changes 100-fold. So if you put lime on a soil that's at pH 4, it will dissolve very rapidly. And as it gets towards 5, it slows down by a factor of 100. And so when we put soils on agricultural land, we've got to keep mixing it and exposing it to new bits of acid, if you like. And that's why cultivation and mixing lime through soils to keep exposing it to acid surfaces makes a difference.
Yeah.
And that's been a complication in the last 30 to 40 years, when lime use has increased, but tillage has obviously changed.
Yeah, I'm guilty there. I encourage the no tillage for sure. But certainly you got to do what you got to do. You
got to do what you got to do, and it's not to say you need to till each and every year, but if you've got a problem, particularly at depth, you you either lime and wait for Father Time to help you move it down there, or you facilitate the process by an occasional tillage event that will actually reincorporate lime to a depth that you need it to be.
I got a funny story to tell you, Steve. I had 40 hectares facing the wind, the northwest, strong wind, sandy soil, not growing anything. I put lime on, had no stubble, the lime would blow away. Frustrated, I'd put more lime on, lime would blow away. I just couldn't get it to get started, really. So in the end, I thought, blow this. I went out and bought some ploughs and started incorporating in, but then it blew more. So it was just a really tricky situation. And then another spot, I had about 3 spots on my farm that were really bad, 4 spots actually. And those facing the northwest wind, really strong winds, are really tricky. But other areas, it wasn't so hard. Eventually, after putting 2 ton of 96% neutralising value from Dongra, I was able to, after 6 of them, eventually get pH change, I think at depth, such that I got really good crop growth. But I ended up putting about 12 ton on. But I was frustrated after about 5 years because it just wasn't happening. I didn't have the capital, the money to go out and buy big stuff and big machinery and do all the nice tillage that I've seen a lot of good farmers do.
Yep.
If I had the money, that would have been smart to have done it properly and probably brought some more, go deeper and bring up some soil with more clay in it to help us settle the erosion. But if you're going to mix it that deep, you've got to have a lot of lime to mix through that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the guys that used to farm next to me, or still do farm where I used to farm, they've got a machine that does a really good incorporation of it. And so obviously it's sort of like a cake, I think, that you've got to have the sugar and the flour nice and evenly mixed to get the reaction to happen all the way through.
Well, mixing's the key thing. Lime reacts with fine particle size. The finer it is, the faster it happens, and the more it's mixed through the soil that it needs to treat, the better it is. So it's like most things on a farm. You've got to compromise somehow. There's some negatives from tillage, but there's some positives from the mixing and exposing lime to more of the acidic soil.
And of course, if you don't fix the problem, it's a sore that will only get worse.
It doesn't get better by itself.
And that's what scares me a little bit for some farmers that I've seen in areas where they do have a lot of wodgel, very acid soil. They're a long way from good lime. They don't sort of realise it, but their yields are not going to go up through time.
No, what you tend to see happening as we've rationalised the number of people in the wheat belt, you tend to see people that have limed well on their home farm are the ones that are buying those other farms now, and they know the recipe to fix it, and it's not cheap, but it's a proven process. So they're the ones that are buying it and tackling the process. So if you're not going to do it, you're probably not going to continue to farm. That's the reality.
It's hard to, in my head, at $400 a tonne wheat in a year when you get 300 mil rainfall, there's a sort of a 4 or 5 tonne wheat crop there, even out in the wheat belt, actually, if all your limitations are removed. But if you have got really acidic soil, you're only talking 1 tonne in those good years. Yep. So that's sort of what you're saying.
Yep, and that's the issue, I suppose. It's the relativity of your production potential for the rainfall that you've got. You decide where you're going to be on that spectrum and manage accordingly.
Right, the cost of lime changes through time and supply and demand and whatever. When I was buying, it was only $6 a tonne, but I imagine it's 12 or more, 15, or what is it now?
Yeah, it's probably up in that range, 12 to 15, and likely to go higher. There's a lot more difficulties in complying with regulations that actually factors in a lot of cost in operating nowadays compared to many years ago. So, yeah, it's like everything.
Yeah. And then you've got, so for those that don't know, that's about a cubic metre, 1 tonne, roughly.
Yeah, it's basically, I think that's somewhere between 1 and 1.2 tonnes, most of the limes in WA.
Yep, so that's, a big truck, 50, 80 tonnes maybe, is what you can take out to the farm. And then you've got to take it 300-400 kilometres, and that costs probably another $30-40 a tonne.
It'd be more than that now.
50?
I think you're looking at about throwaway numbers, probably 15 cents a tonne kilometre.
Yep. So, so you put that with the lime, it's quite a cost. So people will balk at it and then they put it on, they don't see a difference because there's too much that's needed. So you'd if you're simplistically looking at it, you say, well, what's the point? But we know from our experience, and we've been in the game a little while now, it's just needed.
It's needed. One of the difficulties is the depth of soil, understanding what proportion of the soil that you need to treat, which sort of lends you into how much soil sampling you do, understanding the variability both on the surface and below the surface. Really understanding if you've just got surface acidity, so the first 10 centimetres, it's a pretty simple process. A couple of tonnes fixes most situations. But if it's acidic at depth, you might need, like you said in your situation, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 tonnes over a period. We try and work on a 10-year time frame and suggest how much you need over a 10-year period to fix it.
So if you're growing continuous wheat and you're pulling off 2.5 tonne a year, that's 25 tonne of wheat. Have you got a number in your head to replace that for lime?
Very gross number is I work on about 10% of the wheat yield. So if you're taking off 2.5 tonne, you need 250 kilos per annum to counter the acid input that you're doing each year. So that means if you grew 2.5 tonnes for 4 years in a row, you need a tonne of lime for that 4 years. And that's to hold your ground and maintain what you've got. If you're in repair mode, you might need 8 or 10 tonnes to get you into that situation.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then, of course, there are different, we talked about different crops having different responses to acidity. Some can tolerate it better, like wheat and triticale. Even lupins actually reasonably tolerant, aren't they?
They are, yep.
Yeah. But then you've got different crops response to different trace elements as well. And you've got a couple of trace elements that are a real problem in alkaline soils.
Yep.
And
yeah, that's certainly the case. Some of the soils in WA, a lot of soils that are acidic have manganese toxicity, but we don't. We've got low levels of manganese. So if you lime it too high on some soils, you can induce a manganese deficiency.
probably zinc as well.
Zinc, to a lesser extent copper probably, but those trace elements, WA was really the mecca of trace element nutrition in the 60s and 70s and before, post-war. And that was actually one of the things that scared department scientists from recommending lime, because we reduce the availability of those trace elements. But most people monitor those things with tissue testing now, and if you do decrease the availability, it's relatively low cost to repair.
Yeah, you can put on foliar, zinc, copper, manganese.
Yep.
Yeah, good. All right, and so there's another way of managing acid soils without putting lime on. I've heard of a soil type that's quite alkaline out in the wheat belt in pockets, that red stuff.
Oh, yep.
What do you call that again?
Moral.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's got a neutralising value of 60% or something.
I don't think many are that high, but certainly there's lots in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So you'd need like 30 tonne of that, wouldn't you?
That's the dilemma.
Per hectare.
A lot of people have done things quite locally and can repair little pockets, but the situation, the 1 million hectares, if there's sources of moral or inland lime or dolomite sources, but it's not going to treat the whole gamut.
Okay. And you and I remember being taught probably by Alan Robson, Lieberg's Law of the Minimum.
Yes.
And certainly lime would be one of those barrels, one of the staves of the barrel where the yield leaks out. And when you lift all that up, you've still then got to focus on getting the others right too.
That's right. And I guess that's, if you talk about a 1 tonne yield potential and you change it to 3 tonnes, you need quite a lot more NPK, S, all the major nutrients.
And because our soils are so sandy, potassium, sulphur and nitrogen will leach quite a bit. I think of Badgingarra, that deep sandier soil, and you struggle to get the yields on that unless you bring all of those up together.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But, when you're close to the coast, rainfall's higher. It's sort of more evident in that higher rainfall zone than when you go inland, where water often becomes the limitation.
So agriculture's been your passion, but let's slip away from that for a little bit and tell me a little bit about Steve Carr. What do you enjoy doing, Steve? What's your life? What's been your hobby? Has agriculture consumed everything, or have you got family?
Yeah, I've got family, but agriculture's probably been the dominant thing. So I didn't grow up on a farm, but I had uncles and grandfathers with farms, so that sort of captivated my interest early. Have operated a little hobby farm that doesn't make any money, but allows me to go and fiddle around doing those bits and pieces. So that's where I spend a fair bit of time.
Up in the hills or down south? Or?
It's in Quindenning, so a couple of hours out of Perth.
Oh, lovely. You get to watch the night stars.
Yes, yep, very clear skies, very cold place. It doesn't ever appear on the news as one of the coldest spots, but it probably rivals Wandering as one of the coldest spots in the state.
So you get your little campfire out, do you, and put the marshmallows on it for your grandkids?
Yes, yep, definitely do that.
So you got any grandkids yet?
Yes, I've nearly got 8, so I've got 7 on the ground and one's on the way.
Oh, I've beaten you by a few weeks. Yeah, my third child just had his first child, so that's number 8 for me. So
yeah, okay,
new phase of life.
Yep,
family's important, isn't it?
It is, but mine are not local very much, so that's a bit difficult.
Okay.
Got a son that lives in Ireland and a daughter lives in Canberra.
Okay. So, Canberra's cold.
It's cold, for sure.
My son lived there for a while in the army.
Oh, yeah.
-5 the other day.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's not a place for me.
Yeah. No. WA is a wonderful place to live, really, and a good place to farm when it rains.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, all right, so now going back in time with the lime journey, tell me, Lorelle Lightfoot, I got to meet Lorelle in the late 80s as well, and she married an ag department guy, and you know her story very well. She went and pegged a lot of lime sites and got this ball rolling a bit, didn't she?
No, it was actually a predated Lorelle. I don't think she pegged too many. Lorelle did a PhD on canola breeding, and in the early days before canola was really a mainstay crop in WA, and one of the things she found was that it was more sensitive to wheat in terms of its response to acidity. And she finished off the PhD and was looking at a career as a canola breeder, and Aglime of Australia, which was at the time owned by Alan Bond, was seeking a scientist to try and develop the lime market. And so she was appointed to undertake that role. So she did a lot of early research on trying to build the lime market. And at the time, she focused on soils that really only had surface acidity. So in places like York and Northern, which didn't have the acidity to depth, which is where the ag department people were tending to work on further east. So it was sort of quite a conflict in those days, back in the early 80s. She was getting lime responses and worked for a lime company, and the department was putting lime trials in the Eastern Wheatbelt, changing surface pH, but wasn't getting lime responses. So the company with a lime resource was advocating liming, and the Department of Agriculture was probably not supporting the process.
I didn't know that, but that makes a lot of sense. So the financial business component would be looking for where you can get bang for buck, and the researchers were looking where the biggest problem is.
Yep. And, you change the surface pH in both situations, but if you don't have subsoil acidity, you've got a response. If you do, unless you altered the subsoil pH, you weren't going to get a response. Or not quickly. Yeah,
and for those that are not imagining where we're going with this, I'll tease it out a little bit more, because I had this experience on my farm as well, that when you've got a deep acidic soil, when the roots are okay in that top layer that you fixed, your roots then get to that really acidic bit, the roots effectively burn off, can't get the moisture that's down here to finish the crop in the West Australian environment in September. That's when you've got to grab all that last bit of water, put it into the head and fill that grain out and give yourself a big crop. So,
Yep.
Yeah, simple.
Exactly the situation.
And of course, we talked about the soil being sandy as well, and we talked about some nutrients leach through the soil really easily, potassium, nitrogen, sulfur. So, of course, where are they? They're down there, not so much up there. There is some in that topsoil, but that topsoil can dry out in August, September, and the roots are relying on the nutrients from below.
That's right.
So, so that sort of makes it pretty tricky from a amelioration point of view. Also, because you've got this. So, if you want to solve that, you've with tillage, you've got this good bit of organic layer up here, and then all this sort of stuff that's got no organic matter, but it does have a bit of nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus, or potassium. And I sort of say that to people that when you do this massive tillage, you're sort of cashing in that pot of gold that's at depth from those nutrients points of view, and then the following year you've used a fair bit of that up, and so you don't get quite the same response necessarily the following year.
I think that can happen in some situations, but it's I think providing you incorporate nutrients and lime and change the depth of soils that the roots can actually explore without hassle, that's when the yield responses come.
Yeah, and the second year, you've got to just make sure you put in more of those other ones on that you've probably taken out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, how much further do you think now that you're sort of heading off into the distance in retirement? You've had a big role in helping people understand this issue throughout your career. Do you think there's much more work to do?
There's always work to do. I did my research on trying to encourage or understand the importance of sampling soils deeper down to the profile to understand where the problem was, and then tailoring a liming recommendation to fix what that situation was. Rel ran a business that used that information, I suppose, to encourage people to do that systematic approach to repairing their soils. It's still evident. I mean, if people sample their soils deeper down, the evidence is pretty compelling that they apply more lime in a more targeted way, and they repair more of their farm than those that just sample the surface. So I think there's still work to get people to do that. They don't all do it, but the ones that have done it over the last however many, 20, 30 years, usually have their soil in a better condition than those that don't.
Right, now, tell me the difference between crushed limestone and lime sand. Why would lime sand potentially be better? And are they the same chemistry?
They're the same chemistry. So all lime is derived from coral and shells in the ocean. Lime sands only really exist in WA and a little bit of the Caribbean. They are crushed coral and seashells and geologically very young. So in Western Australia, they're estimated to be between 5,000 and 7,000 years old. So those corals broke up in the ocean, deposited on beach, blew up into dune systems, and that's how we mine and use them today. So they're not cemented together. Limestone forms from exactly the same process, but those sands that blow up onto the beach that are broken coral get cemented together over time, usually from easterly winds that bring in iron and aluminium oxides from soils and blow over them and cause them cement together and become stone over time. And to use them for agriculture, you've obviously got to crush them.
Why? Obviously, why? I'll ask the dumb question.
Well, a stone, lime reacts when it's fine. So if it's a stone, you're not going to get any, you've still got the pyramids standing that are thousands of years old that are limestone. So we need to crush it up to make it fine to apply it.
So a rock can only dissolve with acid on the outside.
Yeah, and it will need a large amount of acid to dissolve a small amount of the rock. You have the same mass of a rock in millions of fine particles, and they'll dissolve very quickly.
Yeah, so you've got to then crush the limestone. How fine do you need to crush it?
Well, the finer the better, but it becomes a practical compromise for the energy required to do that. So I think basically under 100 micron is the best, but anything under 300 or 400 micron will react pretty quickly as well.
So that's about 0.2, 0.3 of a millimetre?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's pretty small.
It is small, and one of the advantages of lime sands in Western Australia is that a large proportion of them have that particle size to start with.
The perfect size.
So
almost.
they're not requiring crushing.
Yeah. So what about burnt lime?
Well, burnt lime is where you use the raw product calcium carbonate and you heat it up with enough energy to drive off some of the carbon dioxide, so you're left with calcium oxide. It's a very reactive, so probably nearly twice as reactive as lime calcium carbonate source, but it's not practical to use. It's alkaline and quite nasty, so it doesn't get used agriculturally very often.
Yeah, and you can blend it. Some people blend it with lime, and that helps. There's two issues that I can think of. One is that you breathe it; it's not good for your lungs.
Yep.
It burns you. And the other one is it's very fine. It can just spray it out there and just disappear.
Yep.
So if you put a bit of lime sand with it, it dilutes it. Yeah?
Yeah, but it becomes an economic situation. I mean,
If you can get it for free, which some people can.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's true.
I've got a couple of mates that have mates.
Yeah.
That they've got a factory and they want to get rid of it. So
well,
that makes sense.
It's worth a lot of money, so
Yeah.
I don't know why they give it away for free.
Yeah. Well, remains of the mine. Yeah. Okay.
No, I mean
You can still sell it.
calcium oxide is used in mining and lots of purification processes where you need very specific control of pH.
Okay.
But you change it from raw lime, calcium carbonate lime sand that's $15 a tonne, to convert that to calcium oxide or quicklime, you change it to $250 or $300 a tonne. So it doesn't really blend itself into widespread use.
Okay. All right. So really it's calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate. If you've got a deposit of it on your farm out in the Eastern Wheatbelt, that's another reasonable option. Dolomite, because of the freight advantage, not necessarily better quality, probably not quite as good quality, yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, most slime sources have a blend of both magnesium and calcium carbonates. One of the problems, if there's too much magnesium, your soils can go like slake over and stop water penetrating. So magnesium acts in the same way as sodium does in Ceylon soils.
Sort of collapses soils, doesn't it, a bit?
Yeah, but it's not really a common thing in WA.
No. I remember talking to an old CSBP guy who said he only found one magnesium responsive site in Western Australia.
Yeah, well...
in his whole career.
Yep.
What was that guy's name? It was...
was it Brian Leach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely guy, Brian.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I actually did my honours on trying to get a magnesium response in the Eastern Wheatbelt.
Oh, and no success?
Could do with some very low magnesium soils in a glass house, but not in the field.
Yeah, I think he said up at near Minginoo, one little spot there he found.
Yeah.
Just one little spot. So, yeah. I mean, it is a nutrient.
Yep.
That plants need it, but obviously there's enough in the soil. And same with, a lot of people say they put lime on for the sake, because of calcium. I don't buy that too much.
No, the amount of calcium in soils
It's huge.
Is very significant. Most soils have had superphosphate applied, which has had a lot of calcium in them for many years. So, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I think it's more the carbonate, bit of the calcium carbonate that reacts with the hydrogen that sends off CO2 and then puts water in the soil Nothing to get excited about on either front.
No.
But that's the reaction.
The carbonate is what earns you the money.
Yeah. All right, and well, that's good, Steve. We've covered a lot of topics there. It's a big issue and it needs to be addressed. I think West Australia is one of the best places in the world to be aware of this issue, because we have this very sandy soil, old soil, as you say, and leachable soil, and with no-till, we have been able to actually grow some really good crops without the soil washing or blowing away.
Absolutely. And look, lime use over the last 30 to 40 years has gone from very little in Western Australia to very significant amounts, and will continue to do so.
Have we got enough lime on the west coast for us another 300, 400 years? How much lime is there?
There's probably enough for a good couple of 100 years. The difficulty will be accessing it. So a lot of lime is held in national parks, so unless policy changes, accessing that's going to be limited. But my guess is that food production will continue to be important, and so government policy to allow access to lime sources should enable it to be available for that source.
All right. Just one other little interesting observation I made. I went to North Beach the other day just for a walk along the beach. My wife grew up there, and I noticed these lime columns, sort of petrified layers of lime. And I went to Penguin Island 2 years ago, and apparently they reckon there was a forest there, and you could see similar trees with these rings around them. Have you seen these?
Not so much there, but I have seen it in lime pits.
How do you think they came about?
What I think that they fought in some of the lime sand dunes that are mobile, you get solidification of things like stalactites and stalagmites in caves. So somehow they cement together within a mobile sand dune system.
So could it be that a tree was growing, then it got buried by residues of lime, and then somehow the wood got turned into the
It could be, but I don't think it's actually petrified wood. I think it's just solidified, and it looks like the shape of a tree.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah. It's Penguin Island is quite compelling because you've got this there's a cave that's sort of eroded out, and I should show you the photos actually, and maybe I'll do that afterwards. But and up above you've got this shape of this is the size of what looks like a tree, and then you've got 6 feet or 2 meters of stuff cut out, and then down below there's the same shape, and then it looks like branches going off, but also the same stuff. So it's very curious. I guess through obviously there's history of WA was different. I also know on YouTube you can see someone talks about a tsunami that hit the west coast of Western Australia about 5,000 years ago. Geologists have done a fair bit of work on that, which lines up with what you were saying about the deposits coming in about that period of time. So very, very interesting stuff. Of course, none of us were here that long ago, so we don't know exactly what happened.
No, exactly.
We can speculate.
Yep, that's right.
All right, Steve. Well, I reckon we've had a good crack at that, and I really appreciate you coming in. Enjoy your retirement. Thanks for all the contributions you've made to West Australian agriculture. I know you've been a solid champion, and you've helped point people in the right direction for a long time. So I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you've done.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for watching this episode, brought to you by 4 Farmers.